Shalom. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High. Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Ba'asham, Kwadash, double honors to the elders and the apostles of the great millstone, and salutations to all you sincere Kiam. And this is your brother Abawan, back again with another video through the spirit and power of Yahweh Ba'asham, Yahweh Ba'asham, Kwadash. All praises and glory is due, especially in the times that we're in. Now, we're just watching this video. United States of from United States of Africa, right? One voice, and it's going into some of the events that are going on here in Africa, specifically West Africa. So this is a little bit of in the local news, right? In the local news, because yeah, a lot of eventful things have happened here, but I haven't really gone into them because the spirit hasn't really gotten on me to make a video about it. As you already know, that the bulk of Bible prophecy, is going into America, Babylon the Great, right? Basically, the things that are going on in Babylon. So, some of the other parts of the world where things are happening, you don't really get too much information or too much, you don't really get too much information because it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, right? The bulk of the relevance, especially when it comes to the scriptures, is in America, Babylon the Great, and really with the elites of Esau, Edom, and the elect, and so on and so forth, right? But the things that are happening here in Africa, right, with these nations that are trying to rise up against Esau, right, and the Esau's reaction to those nations, that's still a part of Bible prophecy, but not really, the main topics or the main things that we deal with in this truth. So the title of the video is Niger leader Tiani speaks out on airport attack details. And a few days ago, there was actually an attack in the Niamey International Airport. Yeah, that's like a lot Niamey, but in the international airports in Niger. Okay, Niger, which is basically it's a country on the north of Nigeria, which is actually my own country. And that's the part of the country of the Alliance of Sahelian States, right? Which is basically the right Niamey International Airport, which are the three countries that recently had a military coup, and it's been the countries that are trying to set up themselves up to fight against Esau, Edom, and against the neo-colonialism and the oppression of Esau, Edom here in the West African continent. Of course, they are all Israelite countries, right? The leaders of these countries are Jakes, right? Chiani, Assimi Goita, and Ibrahim Traore. And Ibrahim Traore is the more popular one because of Burkina Faso, and they've been recently trending because of all the changes and the fight against Esau's imperialism and Esau's colonization that they have been doing, nationalizing their mineral resources, arresting the company CEOs and spies and representatives of these different companies that are using Esau's foreign policy laws to oppress and to extract cheap resources from their lands, right? And due to that, you are seeing a lot of different reactions and different basically just that different reactions that Esau is putting out, right? Including this attack on the Nigerian airport. And previously, there was even a Nigerian journalist, right? A Nigerian journalist, not to be confused with Nigerian, because Nigeria and Niger are two separate nations. But you had a Nigerian journalist, right? A citizen of Niger, right? Which of course, all these countries that, even though they are all different, even though it's all different countries here in West Africa, right? It's still all the same people, and it's majority Israelites, that's the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians, the scattered Israelites that are scattered throughout the four corners of the earth. So you had a case where a Nigerian journalist was arrested in Cote d'Ivoire because he spoke against the president. I believe that's Alison Ouattara, which is the president of Ivory Coast or Cote d'Ivoire, right? I've forgotten his actual name. I think he's Ouattara. Right, Alassane Ouattara. That is the president of the Ivory Coast. Right. So you have, like I said, you have a lot of things going on right now, here in West Africa, but they don't really have any major relation to Bible prophecy. When we talk about the MOT being, you've already gone through. I've already really done videos and gone through all the different things that are going on here in Nigeria that might involve the MOTB, and that doesn't include, you know, any of the crime movements that happen here in Nigeria, right? And there was also another detail, another something I should have done a video on, but this spirit just wasn't on me, right? So I just want to quickly do this video right now to cover everything, which is going to the movements of the Red Horse, because recently, right, the US just sent about 100 or so troops to Nigeria. So they just recently touched down. I think it was a week or two ago, where they touched down, and nothing much has changed since that time period. And the spirit wasn't really on me to do a video on it, but I'm going to do one now. Right. So this is the book of Revelation 6 verse 3. And when he had opened the second seal, I heard the second beast say, come and see. And there went out another horse that was red, and power was given to him that sat thereon to take peace from the earth, and that they should kill one another, and there was given unto him a great sword. Right. And this is basically what Esau, Edom, right, is doing all over the earth with America, Babylon the Great. Because if you remember, there are three great city states, right, in Esau's system. You have the religious center, which is your Vatican City, the economic center, which is London, and the militaristic sector, which is Washington D.C. And that's why you are saying that it is America, Babylon the Great, that's doing all these invasions, right? And going around and kidnapping presidents and invading different nations. And this is another example of that here in West Africa. And there are a lot of theories going around as to why this is happening, right? One of the main theories is basically, oh well, the US is clearly after the oil that is here in Nigeria, right? It's trying to forcefully create a, trying to trying to go after the oil here in Nigeria. But the problem with that logic is that the US already owns the oil that is here in Nigeria, because the largest trading partner for oil in Nigeria is the US, right? So the idea is that, well, China might come in and start requesting or start, blocking trade with or oil trade with the US, and start, taking more oil from the US, and still basically the US's trade partner here in Nigeria, like that done in other parts of the world. So yeah, let me quickly go into that just to show you what I'm talking about. It's an article, right? So the US troops in Nigeria, which is something that happened a few weeks back, right? So let's just see. Okay, 2 days ago, Seb. So like, yeah, something that happened 2 days ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago, because I've been sitting down on this topic, right? I've been trying to figure out how I can go about this, but the spirit wasn't on me. So I just said, let me just do something on it, because this is a big deal right here, okay? And it's showing you once again Bible prophecy being fulfilled, the red horse in action, right, to make war and take peace from the earth, rather than sending the weapons to the Nigerian government for them to be able to take care of the quote-unquote terrorists, right, that the US government themselves have already admitted to funding, right? If you remember the time period earlier last year, when USAID was being exposed as funding various terrorist groups in West Africa and the Middle East, including Boko Haram, ISIS, ISWAP, right? Which are the major terrorist groups operating here in Nigeria. So the US is sending US troops to deal with a terrorist threat that they are funding, right? And of course, you already know that even after USAID was basically exposed, right, the US is still responsible for funding these terrorist groups. So yeah, US deploys 100 soldiers to Nigeria as attacks by armed groups surge. The US soldiers will not have a combat role and are to operate under the full command authority of Nigeria's military, right? And if you know anything about militaries and countries' militaries, you know that the chief of armed forces is the president, right? And the president of Nigeria is a puppet, okay, in every sense of the word, right? So let's say president and more an overseer, and basically his role is to ensure that the US's operations here in Nigeria go as smoothly as possible. And that's the thing right there. The US don't even actually need to invade Nigeria the same way they don't need to invade Greenland, because they already have major oversight and major control over these territories, right? So the question now becomes, what is the reason for this? And this is, of course, once again going into Bible prophecy, right? Going into Bible prophecy, right? This is just how Esau Edom operates. They can't help themselves, okay? Esau already has the control. He already has the power. If the U.S. government tells the Nigerian president to do something, he will do it without question, right? Because the U.S. already controls Nigeria. The same thing with Greenland. Troops don't need to be in Greenland. You already have all these tech billionaires. They're already doing what they want to do, whatever they want to do in Greenland. Was it not? It's not either Peter Thiel or one of his, or another one of his partners, right? That are basically mining for resources in Greenland already. They're looking for resources to mine in Greenland, right? But now, so these troops that are being sent, all they are being sent here for is to protect the resources, right? To, basically ensure smooth transition, smooth movement of the resources, the oil and anything else towards America, Babylon the Great. So what you are seeing right now is the beginning, right? The starting point of Jacob's trouble. So let's get that, because because you Jakes out here, especially you Jakes that are here in Nigeria, you should already understand how the US government operates. Okay, you should already understand how the US operates, right? And this is something, this is, just a sign that, hey, not only is Esau's kingdom coming to an end, but these devils are beginning to act more and more harshly, okay, in these last days. Revelation 12 verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Right, because we are praising the Most High, Yahweh Hashem, Yahweh. We're finally at the end of this thing, right? You can already see the US deploying troops, right? The same way that in the last days, that time will come when they'll also deploy troops into West Asia, the Valley of Yehoshaphat, where the Most High will judge them, right? So now the US is deploying troops into Nigeria to protect their interests, quote unquote, protect their interests. Revelation 12, verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. Because the devils understand, is it not their doomsday clock that says it's 1 minute or so till midnight, 11:59 for them, because they understand that their kingdom is coming to its end. So now these devils are just being blatant with it and doing as they please in order to not only preserve their power, right, but control over the earth. And that's why these devils have become more violent and using, you know, their military, showing their true hand. This is Esau Edom we're speaking about, the man whose blessing is the sword, right? This is exactly how Esau operates, and that's why, Esau, right? Donald Trump, the U.S. government, and of course we know that the reason why Trump is doing all this is not because he wants to do it, or he wants Greenland, or he wants to invade any nation, but rather because the elites of Esau Edom have given him this order to send his troops, to send his military to all these different parts of the world for them to operate in these theaters of, yeah, of conflict, right? So the reason why Donald Trump is out here sending his military, sending his military troops to all the different parts of the world and threatening to invade all these different nations, because this is what the elites of Israel are going after. And this is how these devils operate, right? Their blessing is the sword. They can only practice evil, and they can only, make war to take away peace from the earth. Like I said, the red horseman is in full effect, right? Is in full operation, and that's why you see all this happening. So let's go back to this article right here. Now it reads, the United States has sent 100 military personnel to northern Nigeria to train and advise local forces as deadly threats rise from armed groups such as Boko Haram and ISIL-linked factions. Samalia Uba, Nigeria's defense headquarters spokesman, confirmed the U.S. troops' arrival in the northeastern area of Bauchi on Monday. Right, so they are in northern Nigeria presently trying to, quote unquote, train the local forces, right? But what they are actually there for is to guard and protect the resources, and even more than that, like I said, that the country Niger is north of Nigeria, okay? And another suspicion that a lot of people have is that the reason why these US troops are deployed is to better and to monitor the AES easier, right? And what Al Jazeera did not actually put here is that these US troops are also going to build a drone base here in Nigeria, right? Because that is how Babylon is easy. That's how it's that's part of going into the reason why it's so easy for Babylon to bomb the Middle East is because in regions like Qatar and in regions like Kashmir, basically these parts, not Kashmir, so like Qatar and Kuwait. That's what I was looking for. Is it Kuwait? Yeah, Kuwait. In countries that you have U.S. military bases, you also have U.S. Planes. You have U.S. Air what was I'm looking for? Airports for military planes, right? Your fighter jets and so on and so forth. Air carriers. I want to say U.S. air carriers where they can easily fuel and equip these fighter jets with bombs and missiles that they can go and practice and perform their bombing campaigns. That's what a lot of these U.S. military bases, especially in Qatar, because I know there's one U.S. military base in Qatar that is mainly for refueling and equipping your fighter jets with weapons so they can practice their bombing campaigns. How is the US so able to access and bomb places like Iran so easily, right? How is the US able to provide logistics to the state of Israel for them to be able to bomb Gaza so easily? Because they have US military bases in different parts of in the Middle Eastern region where they can easily fuel and monitor what's going on in these different parts of the world. That's why you have US assisted bombing campaigns all over the Middle East. Okay, and that's exactly what is most likely being strategized here as well in Nigeria, because they are not only putting military personnel or bringing military personnel here, but they are also planning to build a drone base here in Nigeria as well. And I recently did a video going into how one of the co-founders of Palantir, I've forgotten his name because it doesn't really matter, but let's do this so I can get, so I won't so you know who I'm talking about, right? Another one of these technocrats, these millionaire tech Joseph Lonsdale, right? Another one of these technocrats, tech CEOs, that billionaire tech CEOs, right? That's US drone, and he recently bought a drone startup company here in Nigeria, which is, or rather I should say he didn't buy, but he invested. Okay, he invested into a drone building company here in Nigeria, which most likely will probably play a role in creating that US military US drone base, right? So another article right here: US to send 200 troops to train in Nigeria to train Nigerian soldiers as it negotiates for a military base in the country, right? And this is something that has been blocked by former presidents of Nigeria for years. I remember that Goodluck Jonathan also blocked US intervention. If you remember that Chibok girls period, when the US offered to send in the military, but Goodluck Jonathan blocked it and said that, well, the Nigerian military would handle this situation. And now you are seeing that this time it has finally come, the US intervention that a lot of jakes here in Nigeria have been praying for without realizing exactly what they are praying for. And I've also done a video on that before, going into the folly of our people and the foolishness of our people when the scriptures say not to trust in the shadow of Egypt, right? Because Jake is always looking to Egypt for deliverance. Let's get that. Isaiah 30 verse 1. Woe to the rebellious children, saith Yahweh, that take counsel, but not of me, and that cover with a covering, but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin. Right. And you have not taken counsel of the Most High, because you're not following the laws, the statutes, and the commandments of the Most High, Yahweh, Basham, Yahushai. And even more important than that, okay? What am I saying? Nothing is more important than that. We know you're not following the laws, the statutes, and the commandments of the Most High Yahweh Basham Yahushai, right? Which is, of course, the most important, and nothing is more important than that, because you are not, hearing the words of his servants, the prophets, right? You aren't listening to what the men of the Lord are saying, and if you are listening, you would know that you cannot put your trust in Egypt. You cannot put your trust in America, Babylon the Great, because America is spiritually called Sodom and Egypt, and that's why I refer to Babylon, America as Egypt. It has those spiritual names, Babylon, because of the confusion that it has spread all throughout the whole earth, right? It has basically confused everything, all the ordinances. This isn't just going into your sexuality and the alternative lifestyles and the alphabet lifestyle that it promotes, but even when it comes to going into the recent video I did, race, nationality, and genetics, right? Things that basically what your nationality is and what your race is determined by your father, and it's determined by yeah, basically just that is determined by your father. Your race, right, and your nationality is basically the same thing. Okay, whatever nation you are from is the same race that you are from, and there are only 14 nations. But you see, these devils have completely confused that by introducing the idea of being mixed. So now you have people that will say that, oh, I'm mixed, I'm half black, half white. Have some people that will say that, oh, I'm mixed, I have Irish ancestry, I have Haitian ancestry, I have all these different nations. I'm bringing them together to say that, oh, you are parts of this and that and that and that and this, and they mentioned 5 different countries, right? That is the confusion that Esau Edom has brought, which is why we call America Babylon the Great, because it's America that promotes that wickedness the most, since you have a quote unquote melting pot in Babylon. Okay, Sodom, of course, because of, like I mentioned, the alternative alphabet lifestyle that is being promoted. Folly is set in great dignity, and the rich sit in a low place. And of course, spiritual Egypt, because it is the house of bondage. Okay, so Isaiah 30 verse 2. That walk to go down into Egypt, and has not asked of my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh, and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. Therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion. Right. And that's basically what you jakes are, especially it's basically the jakes in Nigeria. They are rejoicing, they are celebrating that, oh, America has finally come, that the Babylonians, the devil has come to save us, right? So let's go into this a little bit more. Let's go into the article a little bit more. The United States is set to deploy 200 troops to Nigeria for military training as the West African nation, ranked as Africa's fifth most powerful military, faces escalating security challenges, right? And the Nigerian military is no scrub. Well, let me just say this: that the Nigerian military aren't scrubbers. Okay, Nigeria actually has a competent military, but you see, when you have a puppet in office that is being controlled by Babylon, and Babylon needs an excuse to invade your nation, right? And they use these quote unquote extremist terrorist groups and a quote unquote Christian genocide, right, to invade your nation, then of course the military has to be underfunded and has to be forced not to engage terrorist groups. This is an actual thing, right? Where the military are being told not to engage the terrorists in order to create a scenario, right? Create a what's what I'm looking for right now? Create a scenario, create a need for quote unquote US military intervention. Because when has Esau ever cared about Jake, right, enough to actually come here for a Christian that's how you know this is the devil, right? That's how you know this is the devil. Okay, these are the same devils that took our people from this part of the world and shipped them all the way over to America, Babylon the Great, and made them serve captivity for hundreds of years, right? These are the same devils that when Jake gets shut up in a church, they don't persecute the Edomite that did this, but suddenly they care about so-called black Christians. And a lot of you so-called black Christians would buy that shit, and you'll be happy as well that Esau is actually showing you compassion. Bunch of damn dumbasses. Okay, let's keep going into it. I don't want this to play. The US currently conducts surveillance operations in Nigerian territory and has previously carried out targeted airstrikes. President Donald Trump signaled additional military measures might be considered to aid Nigerian efforts. And it's funny how that works. The US has been here and no terrorist has been killed yet. The first initial airstrike they did was in an uninhabited region in the middle of Sokoto, state, right? Which is once again bordering Niger, right? Which once again bordering Niger. because that's where the bulk of their operations most likely will take place, between the border of Nigeria and Niger, because the popular theory is that they are trying to monitor the AES, right? Because they're trying to monitor the AES and trying to figure out a way to basically um, disrupt whatever is going on in the in the northern Sahelian region. And in case you don't know what I mean when I say the Sahel, let me just quickly bring out a map of the Sahel region, which is basically the middle belt of Africa, right under the Sahara, right? So you have North Africa, you have the Sahara, you have the Sahel, then you now have the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. So this is the Sahel right here, and it's a region that just cuts through between the Sahara Desert and the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa. So that's the Sahel right there. So this is a good description. Well, let me try and big it up a little bit. So open image in new tab. So let's see if we can open it in a new tab and show a big. Here it is. This is the Sahelian region, and then you have your Mali, you have your Niger, and you have Nigeria, right? Northern Nigeria. This is where Sokoto is. This is the. Let's zoom into it a little bit. So this is the region right here in the middle of the map, right? This is the region right here in Nigeria where the first airstrike on December 25th, 2025 most likely hit, right there, bordering Niger. Okay, so this is where this is Niger, and this is the main three nations that have military coups that are basically anti-Western, anti-imperialism, right, coming against Esau, the three main nations of Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso, right? So this is what the Sahel is. So it's Mauritania. Mauritania is actually North Africa, right? Mali, Niger, Chad, Sudan, and Nigeria as well, because Nigeria is technically a part of the Sahel since it has borders in the Sahel region, right? So, yeah. So now let's go back to the article, right? And that's basically all we need to get about that. Okay. That's basically all we need to get about that. So let's go back to this video right here, and I didn't really play anything from the video because there isn't really much to glean from the video actually. Just going into the intelligence gathering of the Malian government, right? And the things that are happening right here in West Africa, right? Different operations that are taking place, and how the West, okay, which is Esau Edom, of course, is trying to shut down the revolution and the military coup leaders, the juntas as they call it here in West Africa. But we see that Esau Edom is basically escalating his violence against you Israelites, right? And Jacob's trouble is coming in a big way to this region. Okay, when these US troops come down, then when these US troops come down, when these US troops are deployed and start patrolling, they are not going to show mercy. Look at Kenya, for example, and the conditions of the Kenyan people there, and how the military, these foreign militaries that are in Kenya treat the people there locally, right? There's a big scandal going on right now about this Russian that's going around, having sex with local African women, right? Quote unquote so-called African women, Hamites and Jakes, right? Mainly Hamites, of course. These Kenyans out here, and posting that online, and you're doing this mainly in Kenya and Ghana, okay? And you're going to have a similar situation with Esau when these troops are on the ground, and they will be the main troops that are used for that are used for when Jacob's trouble comes in, right? The hour of temptation, the MOTB. I can definitely see the US troops being used to force the MOTB on everybody, on different people here in Nigeria, right? So I'm just going to end the video right there. Once again, all praises, honor, and glory unto the Most High. Yahweh Basham Yahweh Basham Raka Kodash. Wa Abad Babalan through the Spirit of Yakim and you are edified. Shalom.